Mike.
Yes.
A lot of my favorite games are big, heavy games with a whole bunch of bits.
Like
but the thing
so
is,
many pieces.
They're not easy to get to the table. So today we're going to talk about games that are easy to get to that table. What's up, everyone? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph. That's right. Today we're talking about games that are easy to get to the table.
Yep.
A lot of times these games, it's mostly because they have a very easy setup. Not all of these are going to be small games. Sometimes there are bigger or heavier games that actually have a pretty easy setup. They're actually just easy to get to the table. Because we have found that that is a huge proponent of whether or not a game gets played.
Oh, for sure. We only have so much time in the world. A lot of our most favorite games are these mid to heavyweight Euro games, and they just often have so many pieces that you have to set up to even begin playing, which is fine.
It's great.
But sometimes I just want to get in and start playing already.
Yeah.
So these are going to be games that you can get to the table a little quicker. They're a little bit easier. Maybe they have fewer pieces, or just the way the game is kind of helps you set up and get playing. We'll talk about them right now. First up is going to be Paris City of Lights, La Cité Lumière. This is a two-player game where you are actually playing in the box itself. The box opens up and there's kind of a grid where you're going to be putting out these tiles and then drafting these polyomino buildings and drafting some postcards and making use of those and stuff. The thing that's really great about this is it's only a two-player game, so it's easy to get set up. You play in the box, so basically you need to open the box, dump out the tiles, set up 8 postcards, and you're pretty much playing at that point. There's really not a lot of setup. And this game I think is really, really cool because it feels very kind of tactical and two-player, where the tiles that we are playing are going to show both of the player colors. So there's blue and orange, and then there's purple, which is sort of usable by either. And the game is played in 2 halves, where in the first half, you're placing out these tiles and you're trying to build large areas with your color. And the other action you can do in the first half is you can draft these buildings, which are going to be a specific shape. But in the second half of the game, in order for those to get placed out into the board, you have to have an area of your color that covers all of the space that building would take up. So you have to be really kind of careful with how you build in the first half and what buildings you draft, so that in the second half you can place those buildings and make use of the postcards that are around the table to do special actions or to give you maybe a benefit or points or avoiding penalties and stuff like that. So I like that this game is 2 players. There's 2 kind of distinct halves, but each half is very simple. The whole game itself is quick, and it's very easy to kind of get up and set up and play, and that's what makes it one that my wife and I will play quite often.
Our number 9 is going to be Terracotta Army. Now, this is not a small game. We didn't want this entire list to just be tiny games, because of course those ones are easy to table. But a lot of these games have some kind of setup component that makes them easy to table. And this is a game where you are discovering the Great Terracotta Army. Or maybe I think you're building the Great Terracotta Army. My apologies, you're building it, you're not discovering it. So if you don't know, the Terracotta Army is this beautiful, huge, terracotta clay army that they discovered in China. They built, essentially, I think it was kind of like a big tomb, essentially. And there's thousands and thousands of these sculptures. They're really, really cool. It's one of the biggest discoveries ever. It's very awesome. So this is a game where you're building this big kind of mausoleum. And it's easy to get to the table because the fact that even though there's all these miniatures in the game, because you have all these terracotta warriors, there's all these miniatures in the game, but they're all put into this box, and this box is just there, and that's where it keeps all the miniatures. And it's so nice because it means you don't have to set anything up for that. You kind of just put out the box, and then as you need miniatures of the game, you just kind of grab them outside of the box. And then the rest of the game is actually pretty easy to set up. And it's got this I really, really like this game. I feel like this game kind of came and went as Board and Dice's games, and I feel like it didn't get too much buzz when it came out, but we really, really enjoyed it. This is a game where you have kind of like an action wheel where there's gonna be kind of multiple layers on this action wheel, and it's gonna be turning throughout the game. So there's gonna be various actions that are paired up with each other. I always really, really like that as a mechanic because it makes the decision space around the actions just have another wrinkle on top of just like, hey, what should I do on my turn? There's now this, ooh, now these two actions are paired up, and that's really, really nice. So on this action wheel, you're gonna be getting things like money, you're gonna be getting things like clay, you're gonna use those clay to build terracotta warriors that you'll then put out into the kind of, I keep saying mausoleum, but I'm not sure if it's actually true, but basically the grid where you're putting them out. And then you have your bases on those ones saying like, hey, I'm the sculptor who built those ones. And at the end of the rounds, there's gonna be scoring in there in terms of like what stuff is adjacent, what things are in what rows. This kind of, there's a little bit of like an area control, kind of like knife fight in a phone booth kind of game going on over there. And then you can go to like specialists and they will do a whole bunch of different things. It's this really, really fun game that's actually pretty easy to table for being like kind of like a midweight, mid to upper midweight Euro game that tend to have a lot of pieces. This one kind of doesn't. It's pretty easy to kind of set it up and get going. And so we really want to put it on this list also because it's a good game that I feel like not enough people play.
Next up is Quirky Circuits. This is a cooperative programming game where we are kind of playing in this spiral bound notebook, which is going to show different, maps essentially. And we're going to be playing these cards to move our robot, forward and left and turn and spin and different things in order to achieve whatever the goal is. So the kind of starter robot is this little cat riding a Roomba, and they have special rules where if they go forward and bonk into something, they will just turn to the right automatically. So you are trying to strategically bonk into stuff and you're playing out these cards, but none of us can communicate what cards we have in our hand. So you are playing cards face down, which will give you an idea of what's going on. Oh, this is a card that will move you forward or backward, or a card that will turn you, but it doesn't have the specific information. Everyone has to contribute to this program collectively, and you have to do this through kind of some intuition and playing cards in such a way, and we always like to communicate in beep boops because we're robots, and stuff like that to hopefully have a program that makes sense. Of course, you're gonna bonk into stuff you don't mean to and get all turned around, and that's kind of the fun of the game. What's really great about this game is there's actually not that many moving parts. Like there's cards that you will shuffle up and kind of, set aside for your, what you're gonna be all drawing from. But all of the maps and all of the kind of scenarios are in a spiral bound rule book, kind of a scenario book rather. So to go from one scenario to the next, you just turn the page, put down your robot on the starting space, maybe put out a couple of tokens, and then you're pretty much ready to go. So I love, I love the use of the spiral bound book to kind of just like, you don't have to put a bunch of tiles to build a map. It's just already taken care of right there for you so we can get right to having fun.
Number 7 is gonna be a series of games that I feel like recently has been coming up a lot on our list, so I apologize for that, but they're great. And this is the Search for series. So the Search for Planet X, the Search for Lost Species, and the Search for UAPs. These are logic deduction games where you are in the first one trying to find Planet X. And so you're looking up into the sky, you have this big circle board that has all these various sectors, and you are observing those sectors to find out what's in those sectors. And then once you find out what they are, you can then start to logically deduce other things about the state of the board. So things like, if you find, I think, a gas clouds are always next to like an empty space. So if you find a gas cloud, you're like, okay, well, one of the spaces next to it has to be empty. And you start to deduce these things down as you find more and more things. You're trying to hone in and find where Planet X is. The Search for Lost Species is kind of similar, but now you're looking for lost species on an island. So you're actively moving around this island, looking for lost species, and all the species that you're finding on the island also have logic rules. So that this thing can't be next to this thing has to be in this pattern, things like that. And the Search for UAPs is kind of like Search for Planet X, but now you're looking for alien phenomena. You're kind of looking for signals of aliens, and you're on Earth, and so the board is actually turning as the game goes. It's really, really fun. But the reason why these games are very, very easy to table is because they are run by apps. You have your main board and you have your stuff that you're writing down, but where stuff is and the way you kind of check things is all done through the app, because the app will know where everything is and you're checking it based off of that. So there's actually not that much setup in these games. You get your little screen that kind of tells you all the different logic rules. You get your pads of paper so you can write stuff down. You get a couple little chits, and you're kind of ready to go. It's very, very easy to get these to the table, and that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. They play really, really good competitively. They're really, really good solo. They're just easy to love, easy to get to the table, and I just really like logic deduction games, and these are the best ones around.
This is another general title. This is just small box card games. We honestly could have made an entire list of just small box card games because by their nature, they're easy to set up and play because mostly they're a deck of cards. So, you know, there are really so many games to explore with this. One whole category can be trick-taking games. 5 Cucumbers comes to mind. It's just a deck of cards and some cucumber tokens, some pickles, and you are trying to trick-take to basically not win the last trick, because if you win the very last trick, you have to take a pickle, and you don't want pickles because in this game, cucumbers or pickles, as we call them, are bad, even though they're good in real life. So I would just search around. And if you're at your game store, go to the area. There's usually just a shelf that has a whole bunch of small games, and they are often easy to play, can often accommodate, you know, 5, 6 people and stuff, and there's not a lot going on, but there's a lot of interest and depth and intrigue based on the mechanisms of that game. And it's always to us amazing how every single year there will be a new small box card game or two, or a new trick-taking game that is just seems to do something that's never been done before, and we're like, how is it possible that we haven't done all of the card games before? But there's always new ones, and they're honestly often pretty darn fun.
Now, I know we just talked about small box card games kind of as this big, you know, series of games, but we're going to talk about one specific, and this is going to be Avant Carde. Avant Carde is slightly different because of the fact that, like, one of the, you could say, gimmicks of this game is that the setup is basically nil. The game is folded up into its box, and so basically all you have to do to play this game is put the thing out and unfold it, and in each fold, every time you fold it over, there's a deck of cards. And so as you fold it, boom, there's your deck of cards. As you fold, there's the next deck of cards, boom, the next deck of cards, boom, the next deck of cards. And so literally to play this game, you go boop, brrr, unfold it, and you're literally ready to go. Even for a small box card game, it is unreasonably easy to table. And it's this cool game where you are gaining these cards. Everyone will have the kind of starter hand of cards, and you're basically trying to play out sequences of cards in kind of ascending order and then also in number. So you basically want to play out as many cards as you possibly can, because you're going to be getting these like trophies for the more cards that you play. And as you're playing out cards, you can either be playing the same number or you can be playing the same color. So you have like purple cards, and so you play like a 2, and then you can play like another 2, but that second 2 is a purple. So now you can play another purple card, and you can kind of build out your deck in that way to try to basically make it so you can continually play these really long hands of cards. And then a lot of the cards, as you get further into the game, you're gaining more and more of these cards that are kind of filling out the middle numbers, and they will also have powers that allow you to do certain things when you play them. It's really, really fun. It's very simple, but again, there's that really, really fun, ultimately gimmick, but I love gimmicks in games, especially if they make the game better and easier to play. And this one does that. I love the fact that when you're done, you kind of shuffle everything up and go boop, 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 put it in its box, and you're done. Next time you want to play, boop, 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 you fold it out, and you're ready to go. It's like I said, unreasonably easy to table this game. It's also small, so it's a great travel game, and you can just go bam, 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 fold it out, and you're ready to go. It's so, so easy to get to the table.
Next up is Carcassonne. There are, of course, many versions of Carcassonne. I'll speak to just base original Carcassonne, the OG. This game is very easy to set up and play because the board gets built as you play it. So it is a game that is emergent, and from the very start, you just have a tile, or if you're playing with a river expansion, you can just set up a couple tiles through the play of that and then get into the regular tiles. But the fact that you have, a handful of meeples, you put a scoreboard out, put a meeple on it, shuffle up your tiles, make some stacks, and then you're rocking and rolling is really great. This is something that we always talk about, where if I was to show someone who isn't familiar with like modern board games in general, if I was to show them a game, I'd probably show them Carcassonne, because they probably have never seen a board game that doesn't have a board, period. That might, other than like an Uno or something, like a card game. So that might blow their mind that there's a single tile on the table and you'd be like, okay, this is the start. And by the end, you have this like sprawling landscape of cities and roads and fields and stuff. And I think that's really cool that the game kind of grows. And then as you're placing tiles out, new opportunities emerge where, oh, there's a bit of road over here, no one's claimed it, I'm gonna add this road, put a meeple down on it, get some points and stuff like that. I think it's really, really wonderful. The game is very intuitive because of the whole match road to road, city to city, grass to grass. Makes sense. Like, I think everyone can understand if a tile is placed wrong, it'll look wrong. And I think that's really nice for helping, helping folks grok rules and having it make sense why the rule is a certain way. I think it's really, really useful. And again, you only have to set up a couple tiles to start, and then the game is the placing of the tiles. So setting up the game kind of is the game, which is great.
Number 3 is going to be another series of games, but you can really play with any of them, and this is Unmatched. Unmatched is very, very easy to get to the table. The rules are simple, the setup is easy, and there's a ton of variety. Unmatched is a game that's usually mostly played 1v1, where you're going to take a character, usually a legend, from a hero from like legend, like King Arthur, something like that, but there's a lot of IP-based ones, so you can also have like Buffy the Vampire Slayer go against a T-Rex from Jurassic Park. And each character has their completely unique deck of cards in their mini, and they might have some sidekicks as well, but you literally grab those components, shuffle up your deck, grab one of the boards, where you're playing on, and you're ready to go. It's so easy to get to the table, and on top of that, it's also easy to kind of just reset and go, because you're like, oh, let's play different characters this time. Okay, I'll just grab this character's deck, let's swap out the board for a different board, and we're ready to go again. This is a game that's very, very easy. You can teach this game in about 5-10 minutes, absolute max. And it's just easy to get into because every card's gonna tell you what they do, and then you kind of get to just explore and discover your character as you play them. It's really, really fun. But one thing I like about the game, again, is just how easy it is to get to the table. There's not all these components you have to do, all these components you have to set up. It's not hard to learn your characters. You're like, oh, you have a special ability, this is what it is. And then you kind of, as you're getting your cards, you'll read through them and see what they do. So even if you don't have familiarity with the character you're playing, you can still pick it up and just go. And then on top of that, like I said, you can just swap things out so easily. New board, new characters, new this, new that. It's just great, it's easy, and it's fun to boot.
Next up is Planet Unknown. This is a game that, there's a whole bunch of pieces and stuff. You have a planet board, a corporation board, but the game is kind of centered around this lazy Susan, hard-working Susan really, in the middle of the table that has all these depots with the various tiles. So you could just take that out of the box, hand everyone a planet board and a corporation, you choose which side to play on, put a couple of cubes on your trackers, and you're pretty much up and playing right there. So like the fact that that depot of tiles both facilitates the setup of the game and then also is vitally important to the playing of the game because it, whatever depot's in front of you dictates which tiles you have available to choose from, is just like so genius. And it's its own storage solution. You just put that thing back in the box as it is. It just makes it easy to set up, easy to play, easy to put away. We always just shuffle the tiles at the end of the game in those depots. So the next time we play, we're just like right to it. Don't even have to think about it because we know we've shuffled them all before. The tiles are sufficiently randomized and we can get going. And then you have a really fun polyomino tile placement game where you are trying to fill up your board, that is your planet, as much as possible. But each time you place a tile, there's gonna be two kind of areas. It might be your civilization, your biomass, your water. And as you place these tiles, you're gonna be bumping up the associated tracks based on the tiles that you place. And as you go up these tracks, you're gonna get a whole bunch of stuff to do. Your rovers will move around and collect these life pods, clean up meteorites to make sure you can score. Civilization will give you these different cards that might give you endgame points or an instant ability. There's technologies that will break rules of the game and stuff like that. So it's so fun to have not just a fill up your board as much as you can with these weird shaped pieces puzzle, which is great on its own, but the bumping tracks, the kind of asymmetry that emerges because we might have different corporations and therefore different abilities and stuff like that. It's super duper fun, and it plays up to 6 people. It plays quickly because it's simultaneous, and it's not long to set up. So this is a very, very, very playable game.
Our number 1 was our most played game of, I think, 2023 when it came out, maybe the year before, but either way, whenever it came out, we played it so much that year because it was so easy to get to the table, and this is Framework. Framework is, as I said, so easy to get to the table. This is a Uwe Rosenberg game that is in the same kind of line as like Sagani and Nova Luna. There's a lot of DNA shared amongst all of these games, but this is my favorite of the game because it's kind of the most streamlined. It's the most simple. Basically what you're doing is you have your player pieces, that's all you need, and then you're basically trying to get rid of your player pieces. You do that by playing out these frame tiles, and the frame tiles are all just in one big bag. So literally give people their player pieces, which is like a little bag full of player pieces, and then put the bag in the center of the table, you're ready to go. It's so easy to get to the table. And basically what's gonna happen is you're gonna draw a tile out of the bag that's going to have frames on it, or I'm sorry, I think they're in the middle of the table, you get to choose one of them. And these are gonna have various frames on them. And what you're trying to do is put like frames adjacent to each other in these kind of big lines. And so you have like silver frames and gold frames and wood frames and brick frames and frames, why not? And basically you're also gonna have these task tiles. These tiles are gonna be like, I wanna have 4 brick frames touching this tile. And there's something called follow through adjacency, which means the 4 brick frames don't need to be touching that tile directly. If they're touching one here, and there's another brick touching it here, that is following through that adjacency back to that task. And so you can basically create this big line of them, this big clump of them, and as long as you're touching one frame of that clump of like brick frames, you're considered to be touching all of them. And when you finish a task, you put a player piece on it to show that you're done with that task, and the first person to get rid of their player pieces wins. It's so good. It's so easy. It's so streamlined. Nova Luna has a very similar thing, but there's like a time mechanic, kind of like Patchwork's time mechanic, that just is fun. It's great, but like Framework just gets rid of all that. It's just the tile placement and just the follow through adjacency, and it's outstanding. I love it. Like I said, we played this game over and over and over and over again, multiple times a week, because it's the perfect like end of the night relaxing game. You don't have to think super hard, and it's just so easy to get to the table because it's like player pieces, bag of tiles, go. When you're done, put your player pieces back in your bag, throw all the tiles back in the bag, you're done. It's just so easy to set up, so easy to put away. It's just satisfying. It's just outstanding. So that was our 10 games that are easy to get to the table. Let us know down in the comments below some games you think they're very, very easy to table, especially if it's not just like a small block card game that's like one deck of cards. Like,
as we mentioned, there's
that's
a billion
very
of those.
easy to get to the table. But if it's a bigger game, especially let us know, because again, those are the games that get played.
Yeah, it's always surprising. Some games that are like, this is actually very easy to get to the table.
Low-key easy.
And start playing. And for us and our money and being busy folks, that is something that makes games more, the easier it is to play, the better it is to play.
Yeah.
So we always appreciate those games that have that. Let us know yours in the comments below, and we'll see y'all real soon.